this opportunity. I'll be talking on classification of proximal humerus fracture and the vascularity part of the proximal humerus fracture. So they are called proximal humerus as a fracture at around the surgical neck. Around 4 to 6% of all the fractures, and about 80% of all the humerus fractures are proximal humerus fractures. The mechanism of injury is usually in elderly. It is usually a trivial fall. They are more prone because of the osteoporosis, because of their vision disturbance, imbalance issues, and in young patients it's usually a high energy trauma. With this high energy trauma, there is severe soft tissue disruption. The other mechanisms could be a seizure or electric shock. So the main loading modes are in a compressive mode. The humeral head impacts against the glenoid. With the bending force, there is angular forces at the surgical neck. The tension of the cuff acts on the tuberosities. So a fall on outstretched hand usually leads to a valgus impacted proximal humerus fractures, and a fall directly onto the lateral shoulder leads to a varus posterior-medial collapse of the fracture. So we divide the classifications based on these 4 parts: the head, the tuberosities, and the surgical neck. So the deforming forces on the proximal humerus, the GT is usually pulled posterior-medially by the supra and the infraspinatus. The lesser tuberosity is pulled anteriorly by the subscapularis, and the shaft is pulled anteromedial by the pectoralis major. So the most commonly used classification is the Knees classification. He classified the fracture based on the number of fracture parts. A fracture part is defined as a part which is displaced more than 1 centimeter or angulation of more than 45 degrees. So depending on that, there's a 1 part, 2 part, 3 part, and 4 part fractures along with fracture dislocations. The AO classification classified as extra-articular and intra-articular, unifocal extra-articular and intra-articular, and then A, B, C types. After the Hertel gave a very comprehensive classification based on the fracture fragments. So basically there are 5 fracture planes involving the GT with the head and the shaft, the LT with the head and the shaft, and the tuberosities going apart. So these are 5 fracture patterns, fracture planes rather, and depending on that 5 fracture planes, you have 12 fracture patterns. So it is a very comprehensive classification, also called the Lego-based classification, but practically it is very difficult to classify the fractures as per this classification. A more practical way of classification is the Mayo FJD classification. In this, there are 7 fracture patterns. The one is the isolated tuberosity fractures. Then the more common one, the varus posterior-medial fracture. The fractures with the head dislocations. Valgus impacted fractures. The fractures involving the surgical neck. And the 2 fracture patterns involving the head. The head is the head split and the head impaction fragment. So this is a more practical classification which you can use on a daily basis. Also, Pradeep sir will explain the various fixation mechanisms for these fractures. So if you know how the fracture pattern is, you can go about easily about how to fix that fracture intraoperatively. This is a more recent classification, the Mitsuzawa classification. This is also based on more on biomechanical concepts. They classified it according to the displacement of the head more medial or the shaft more medial, and then sub-classified it accordingly. It is also a very comprehensive classification, but I think Mayo classification is a better one to use daily in day-to-day practice. Coming to the blood supply, the blood supply of the proximal humerus is from the anterior circumflex and the posterior circumflex humeral. Regarding the literature, there has been debate regarding whether anterior supplies more or posterior supplies more. With more the recent literature, the anterior circumflex humeral is supposed to be the majority blood supply. The arcuate branch of the anterior circumflex, there is a branch which ascending branch from the anterior circumflex which ends into an arcuate artery which goes into the greater tuberosity. That is supposed to be the majority of the blood supply. They even conducted studies on fresh cadaver specimens. They did a technician-based scans, and they found that the most of the blood supply goes to the inferomedial portion of the proximal humerus, and the most least vascularized zone is the head, superior-medial part of the head. That is why when they go for avian, the superior-medial part of the head is the first part which usually gets involved. The Hertel gave the criteria for the predictors of the humeral-led ischemia. Distal metaphyseal extension of less than 8 mm, a disruption of the medial calcaire hinge, and fractures of the anatomical neck. They are poor predictors of the, they are predictors rather of causing ischemia. So in the recent time, they have conducted studies to see whether the Hertel criteria it still fits in to define whether the ischemia will be caused or not caused. So this is a study from the European Journal recently published in March 26. So they evaluated about 94 patients in whom they had did a plating and a 2-year follow-up. So what they found is a classical Hertel criteria did not show significant correlation with AVN and failure. Rather, what they found was a fracture around the anatomical neck and the tubercle displacement greater than 10 mm were more good predictors of a failure. And more severe the knee type of fracture, more is the chance of failure in terms of ischemia or in terms of fracture failure fixation. Another study from Jan 26, they analyzed 204 patients in which what they concluded that Hertel's criteria, it has a good high sensitivity and negative predictive value in patients who will, to identify the patients who have low risk for AVN. But if the criteria are met, say for example, there are high criteria for AVN, so but the positive predictive value is less. What it actually means is that even if there are high risk criteria as per Hertel, not necessarily the fracture may go into AVN or failure. So the take home point is that displacement matters more than the number of parts. If there is severe displacement, there is more of vascular disruption. Stable fractures usually do not go for ischemia. And this even aligns well with the biomechanical classifications of Mayo and Mitsuzawa. And AVN risk is predictable, but it is not absolute. Not all high-risk fractures will go for AVN, or not all safe-looking fractures may not collapse. So you cannot depend only on one criteria, rather you can combine the imaging and the intraoperative findings and then decide whether which fracture can go for AVN or which will not. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. So I won't take questions because we are running a little short of time. Avinash will present his talk.